Hi everybody, my name is Ryan and this is lesson 18 of learning HTML and CSS. In this lesson we'll be learning about font families. A font family would be something like Arial or Verdana, so it's the type of font that you are choosing. Because the font is a presentational aspect to the website, we need to do it using CSS rather than HTML. Remember, CSS is cascading style sheets and it is used for the presentation of the website. HTML is to do with structure. So in terms of my HTML, I have one heading, one paragraph. In terms of my CSS, I'm linking to lesson 18.css, which is currently empty. So let's start by creating a rule for our heading and setting the font family to Arial. Here's an easy example. Font hyphen family followed by a colon. And see how the heading changed to Arial. Okay, let me do another example. Comic Sans MS. So this font has more than one word in its name, and so we need to put quotation marks around the font name. This is really important. Okay, now not everybody will have every font installed on their machine. So if the person doesn't have Comic Sans MS installed, what will happen? Well, the browser will actually just default to whatever the default font is. You can see this by making a spelling mistake somewhere in the font name. This would simulate the browser not knowing anything about that font, and you can see how it's just defaulted back to Times New Roman. Okay, so what we do is we put a comma and then we put the name of another font, and then the browser will first try Comic Sans MS. If it does not have that installed, it will then go and use the Arial font. I'll show you how this works. I made a spelling mistake again, so the browser will not be able to find that font, so then it will use the next available font, which is Arial. It's always a good practice to put 2 or 3 fonts next to your font family, so that if the browser doesn't have the first font, it will try the next one, and so on. Let's go to w3schools.com, and just like we had a good HTML tag reference, we also have a good CSS reference that we can look at. And here are all the main categories. You'll see it's all divided into different presentational aspects. So we want the section on fonts. We can just scroll down. And font family is the one we're looking for. It specifies the font family for the text. Let's have a look at this example of a paragraph. First it will try Times New Roman. Note the quotation marks again. Then if that's not available, it will try Georgia. And finally Serif. Now Serif is not actually a font. The bottom here talks about generic families. So a generic family basically is a category of fonts. So there may be several different fonts inside of that category. So it would be all fonts that have similar characteristics to each other. So the two most commonly used generic families would be Serif and Sans Serif. I'll quickly give you a demonstration of the difference between the two. So if I zoom in on this font so you can see what it looks like, the first font is Arial, the second one is Times New Roman. So let's start with Times New Roman. Times New Roman is an example of a serif font, and the way we can tell this is by looking at the edges on each of the letters. You'll notice around each of the edges there's points, and those are known as serifs. Whereas on a font like Arial, all the letters are rounded, so there are no serifs. So this is what we call a sans serif font. So the word sans means without the little serifs. Okay, so Verdana would be an example of which type of font? Let's have a look. Okay, that's a Verdana font. You can see the edges are curved, so there's no points on each edge, so this means this font is a sans serif font. Let's look at Tahoma. Tahoma. Ooh, it's got the little edges. It's got the little points on some of the letters. So this is definitely a serif font. And then there are, of course, the other categories. Let's take Monospace as an example. Monospace would be all the fonts that have equal spacing between the letters. So if I set this back to a normal size, you can see it looks like it came out of a typewriter because the space, the gap between each letter is the same. It can be quite a nice effect. So from now on, whenever you need to specify a font, always put the first one that you want as your first preference, and then put something else that's similar as your next preference. And then a really good idea is, as an absolute last resort, the browser will use a font from the same category of font. So even if it doesn't have the one you want, it will pick something similar, of similar characteristics. So at least the website will still look the same way as you intended it to look from the beginning. And there is another way we can work with fonts, and that is to make use of Google Fonts. So Google Fonts is a free service provided by Google, and you can actually choose the font that you like. You can see there's a whole lot of different ones that they have over here. So you could pick one that takes your fancy. This one looks quite interesting, and it's called the Rock Salt. Now, the chances are pretty high that not many people have the font Rock Salt installed on their computers. But the beauty of this system is that they don't have to have the font installed on their machine. So the website will just create a connection to Google and actually use the code that Google have in order to represent this font. So let's see how we use this font. We would just click the little icon here which says Quick Use, and then it will unfortunately have a little bit of a impact on the loading of the page, but it's not too bad. All you have to do is add this code to your website. So you just highlight it. It's just a link tag basically. So you add it in your head section along with your other link tag. It's possible to have more than one link tag in your document. So here we have our CSS file, and here we have the one that links to Google. I think we should actually put this one first because we would want it to load before our CSS file. The code runs from top to bottom, so whatever you put first will execute first. So this will actually load the physical font family from Google, the Rock Salt font family from Google. So if I want my heading to be in Rock Salt, I would then say font family Rock Salt. Remember, this has got more than one word, so I need to enclose it in double quotation marks or single quotation marks. And there we have the Rock Salt font family. And the advantage, as I said before, is that anybody, no matter who they are, will be able to see this font because they will be connecting to Google. Now, if we go back to this website, the Google Fonts website, they give you an example of how to integrate this into your CSS. Note that they actually provided a secondary font just in case maybe the connection to Google is down or something like that. We can just copy that, paste it into our code. So this could be, for example, you're looking at the website on your local machine and you don't have an internet connection, then it will just use cursor for the time being. It's always a good idea to have a backup font in case the first one doesn't work. And that ends our lesson in working with font families.